Okay, some students asked me to go over exactly what is supposed to go in the study group log. So I just want you to go. I want to go through this with you and make sure that uh, you understand what goes where and how to write it. Okay, so obviously your name goes here. And in the study group member, place it. It says place a check by the name if they were in attendance. So you want to put down during the week. Were these people there, and did they actually attend your study group meetings? Because what happens is that people say they're going to be in a study group, but then some people don't show up. So by putting in their name, and I didn't put down where, but you might want to go ahead and put like exactly where it happened. If it happened in advisory, or did it happen at the library? You might want to go ahead and add that if you want, just to make sure you have a record of when you did it. If you want me to change the form and add that as yet one more record keeping tool, we could do that. So, and what the point is, you want to get the names of your study group down. So now that you have your study group members now some people said, well, what if you have more than six? If you have more than six, it gets to be a burden, because then with more than six people, uh, you have to manage a lot of individuals in your study group. But that's up to you how many people you want to put in your group. Some people only have two. Some people don't have one, and anyone else in their group, and they're finding it difficult to find someone to work with in a study group. If you're in that position, you should see me, and we'll make sure to get you someone in your study group so that you can do some of these activities. Again, what's the purpose of these activities? And you should always ask yourself that. Why are we doing this? Well, you're doing this so that you can make sure that you're doing your 6 R's repeatedly, so you maximize your chances of doing well on the exam. So again, my suggestion for a study group is 2 to 4. If you want 6, that's fine. If you want more, I'm not going to regulate that. I'm just suggesting, based on experience, that anywhere from 2 to 4 is the best number. Here in the beginning date, so the beginning of the beginning date for the week was August 21st, and the end date for the week was August 25th. And so that was the week that you're filling this out for. So you're gonna need one of these every week, and I'll have copies of for you. They're blue papers, so you can we can all distinguish them from your notes. So this is going to go in your notebook right before the week's notes. And what you're going to see is you're going to put punch holes in it. In the classroom, you'll have a hole puncher available to you. Punch holes in it, and then that's going to go in your notebook, in your binder, right before and notebook and binder are the same thing in my class. In your binder, that's what's going to go right before the week's work. So this first one goes in front of week 3, which started on 8/21 and ended at 8/25. Now it says, what were the main ideas for the week in class? Now here, you can't do this box until the end of the week, so you'd have to wait till Friday when you got home, or Friday after class. You'd have to wait till Saturday. You guys could use some of the study group resources to contact each other through Google Chat, or through whatever means you feel you can work through to have a conversation about what the main ideas were. But honestly, after you finish all these sheets, you should know what the main ideas were for the particular week's classwork. So for this week, for instance, you would probably want to write down lab safety, was the main idea. You'd probably want to finish off themes of biology. And if you had one for the week before, you'd want to put themes of biology again. But here we finished it completely, right, with all the different activities we did. And for some of you, and I think maybe all of you, we would have gotten the beginning of the chemistry of life. Now, that's, and of course, we want to work on one of the theme, which is systems. And you'd want to write in systems, you'd probably want to put down the food, food or factory farming. Then if you have room, or if you want to write smaller, or whatever you'd like to do, you might think that this is way too broad. You might say, you might want to focus on listing the themes. That would be kind of too much for this small block. You might want to focus on, know your themes. And examples. Because that's something that you would probably want to write down, so that when you're going back to review, that you know that this is going to be something that you really need to be able to understand, so that you can apply these themes throughout the year. And with systems, you might want to, emphasize the components. And the example for systems that you should, I think everyone should understand by now, is this idea of factory farming, and what are the components of factory farming? What are the considerations? Well, this you don't need to write down in your study guide group, but one of the things that you would have studied, hopefully, and you probably would have wanted to make sure you've written down in your notes, is your concept map. That if done correctly, was what it did was it allowed you to take a look at the components of this system and put it together. Okay, so now weekly notes and reflection. It says you need to choose one partner. So choose a partner from your study group. Now, if there's an odd number, somebody can do it twice, or maybe somebody for this activity, you might work with someone else in another study group, but you need to partner up to get this done. First thing you got to do is evaluate your own notebook, right? Now, the first question, number 1, says recording. What percentage of notes did you get? How do you know, and what are you comparing it to? Well, I'm studying with my partner. We're in the same class, hopefully. If not, all classes should have the same notes, or if not on the same day, then by the end, everyone should have the same notes. I have the PowerPoint online on the web page. So what I would do is I would say, if this is the percentage, and I mean, can you calculate an exact percentage? No. I mean, just think of a pie. Think of the notes, all the notes as a pie, and ask yourself, after you've looked at the evidence, this is an estimation, right? This is a reflection. How much of these notes did you get? Did you get every word off the board? Someone asked me, do I have to get every word off the board? Well, it's going to be hard to get every word that's written, right, or every word that's on a PowerPoint slide. And is it useful? That's another good question, to write down every single word. I think it's the main ideas that you have to try to focus on. And once you get the main ideas, and you have them written down, but you have to make sure that they're main ideas. So you want to know what percentage. So what's a good percentage to be shooting for from a class set of notes? I think if you get 80% or more, if you get 100%, great. If you get 80% or more of the notes off the board and off the PowerPoint slides, then I think you're doing pretty good. So I could make a get, but if you're thinking about that pie and you only think you got a sliver of all the content because you weren't focused or because you had to go to the office, had to go home, or you write slowly, whatever. If you're only working at 10%, then that's a lot of room for improvement, right? So that's the kind of thing you got to be thinking about. This is what you want, and this is kind of where you don't want to be, right? So what percentage of the notes did you get? Well, after I compare. Let's answer the other two questions first because I think it would help us understand where I got that percentage. I compared notes with my partner, and I have everything that he had. Then we looked at the PowerPoint and we noticed there was information missing. Now, is it necessary? Is it necessarily true that you're missing that information? No, I'm just giving you this as an example, right? So in this example, I compared it with my partner, and I had everything he had. We lined up perfectly, but then when we looked at the PowerPoint, there was information missing, and then we remembered that it was talked about, but we didn't get a chance to write it down. And it's about 20%. So there's about 20% missing. Again, looking at the pie, just thinking, coming up with a number. I mean, you could count how many terms in the whole presentation and then divide and come up with a percentage, but that's just too much work. You don't have to do that. Just have to make a guess. And then, let it be a reasonable guess. Don't be unreasonable when you're guessing, because this is not only is this for a grade, and yes, I'm going to hold you accountable for making a decent guess. It's more about you being honest with yourself, right? And making sure that you're able to make a really good estimation about how much of the information that was covered that you actually got. And then then you might say we felt we missed 20%. So we got about 80% total, right? So the total would be 80%. So that would be the original answer. So the percentage to answer the first question would be 80%. And how do we know? I compared notes with my partner, then we looked it up on the PowerPoint, and we noticed there was some information missing. We felt it was 20%. So, yeah, and by the way, you could go back and add it if you think that 20% was important. But if you think that 20% was just like examples or repeated examples, then maybe you don't feel like it's worth your time. You have to manage your time. You have to think, look, I only got so many hours in a day. I have all these classes. I got to manage this time well. I have to do enough to get the grade that I really want. So reduction, when you look at your notes rather, because this is about you evaluating your own notes, and you're looking at Cornell notes, do you have when you ask yourself, are you reducing? Do you have a lot of information here on this side, the recording part, that then you reduce to maybe a small list? Is that happening? Did you reduce that when you did your summary? Is that information? Did you take and reduce the recorded information down into something that was a reduction, that reduced it so that you could easily manage a study? Did you maybe make index cards? Making index cards is a reduction. You take and you put one word instead of a whole set of notes. You're putting one word on one side of the card and a definition on the other. or one formula on one side and a definition on the an example on the other, that's a form of reduction. Now, actually using the index cards, that would be a form of recitation, right? So reciting. Can you easily cover up the sides? Can you tell me that your notebook can be used to recite? Can you show me examples of how you have your little list here of all the complicated information and diagrams is over here, and you have your keywords here. Your definition is, let me redraw this. Here you have the definition, and over here, or rather, here you have the definition. They could be long, could be short, but then here you have the word. So the word, the definition. Could you use that to cover up? Could you, for instance, so could you take and cover up the definition and read the word off and make sure that you know it, so you can cover up the definition and say, DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid, DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid. See, that's recitation. Or maybe you cover up the word and you say, what's deoxyribonucleic acid? DNA. What's ribonucleic acid? DNA. So you have either cover up one side and look at, or cover up the other side. If I see it formatted when I look at your notebook, if I see your notebook formatted so that I see evidence that you can use these notes, your notes, the notes you take in class on, or the notes you take on your book, or the notes you take on any reading I give you, or the notes you take during the lab, if you can write down a definition and then a word on the other side, you cover up one side and then test yourself on the other, then you have evidence of recitation, so you can put check, yes, you do. And this particular answer is really easy. You can just put yes or it's a no, right? And in the margin summary, keyword, shortening of list, if it's either yes or no. So really, when I grade the notebook, I just want to see yes or no here, yes or no here, the percentage, what you use to make that determination, what you're comparing it to. All this other stuff here is just examples for this video so that you understand what you should be doing as a group. Okay, and this is obviously taking a lot longer than it should for you because I'm explaining everything in detail with examples. All right, so reflection. It's my dog snoring in the background, so sorry about that. So, reflection. Are your summaries or questions in the margins clearly in your own words, and do they demonstrate thinking on the topics being discussed? Okay, so when I look at your Cornell notes and I see in the margin a question, or I see a summary down here of the notes, the summary being your reflection, and some people write summaries as a reduction. It's not really a good reflection. It's just kind of just a reduction. They take this information and kind of reduce it to a small list or a bullet point list. That's fine. You can do that. And writing a summary that way is fine. I'm just saying that when you're reducing, you're not really thinking. You're not processing it. You're not connecting it to other ideas. So when you're reflecting, my dog, oh God. When you're looking at your summaries and questions in the margins, clearly in your own words. So when you write this, your questions out, are they questions that you're asking? Are they thoughtful questions? Are they questions that kind of demonstrate that you've thought about this and you're thinking about an aspect of it? What's a good example? Well, someone in class asked a question, and I hope they wrote it down because it's a great question. Someone asked a question and said, well, Mr. Mendoza, if it's true that isotopes have different number of neutrons than protons, and atomic number is the number of protons, and hydrogen only has a mass number of 1 point something, does that mean that hydrogen doesn't have any neutrons? That's a great question. So that showed me that they were thinking about what we were talking about, that they processed it, and they asked a pretty deep and very thoughtful question. Those are the kinds of questions that get your juices running and that actually get you really ready to pass and do well on almost any exam. So the answer, of course, was yes. That's true. Hydrogen is just a single proton with no neutrons. And so the hydrogen atom actually is a very special atom. We'll talk about it. There's a lot of them in the human body. So when we talk about taking notes, those questions, a summary that summarizes in your own words and then shows that you've thought about the problem, and questions that are thoughtful, are very good examples of reflection. So when I'm looking for reflection and when you're looking for reflection, hopefully what you're seeing in your own notes and hopefully what you're thinking when I see it, when I go look and actually grade your notes and compare it to this study group session page, what I'm going to see is a reflection that has those qualities, questions that in the margins and in summaries that actually demonstrate that you understand the content to the point where you can write them in your own words and you can ask your own questions. Review. In this section, I'm looking to see is a review section of your log completed, and we'll look at that. And, oh, by the way, here it says, are there summaries and questions in your word? Again, this is going to be yes or no. All right, just say yes or no. And again, as with everything, I will have my own opinion when I grade it. I want to see what you're thinking. So when I grade your notebook, we can have an intelligent conversation. If I think that you didn't have that you thought maybe you had 10%, I felt that you had closer to 25%, or 30%, whatever it is, and you thought you had 80, and I think you had, or maybe I thought you had 90, whatever. We can have a conversation about how we might fine tune this process, so you can be reflective and you can be honest with yourself, but also so you can prepare for these exams. All right. So is the review section of this log completed? And that's either going to be yes or no. And now this one's a little more difficult for some people. It says, did you review the year's content? Now, for the year's content, we're talking 3 weeks so far. So that's not a big deal. But come November, December, January, the year's content is going to be 2 or 3 months worth of work. So I'd like to see you actually thinking about, did I review the content that I was supposed to? How many times did I review it? Did I go over protein synthesis? Did I go over DNA synthesis? Did I go over the chemistry of life? Do I know it? If I know it, check. If I don't, then I need to do some work. I need to get to work and do some recitation, or maybe I have to go back and do some reduction, then do some recitation. All right. So revision is what you did to change your notes this week, and where did you get that new information, right? So here's this 80%, the original recording, and you thought you got 80% the first time, and you looked at that PowerPoint, you saw you were missing 20%. What could you do? You could have got it from your notes, from the PowerPoint. You could have got that missing information from your fellow. Maybe your partner and you did not have the same exact notes. Maybe he had more notes that you didn't have, and maybe you had notes that he didn't have. Maybe you add to your notes that stuff. One thing you might want to think about, just to make it clear so that we're communicating well, you might want to go ahead and do different colors. So you might write in black, and please try not to write consistently in the odd color pen, like the greens and the purples. It makes it difficult to read later. Save those odd color pens for highlighting and for key ideas and keywords, like what I'm about to suggest. What if you did your notes in black ink or pencil, and then you decided then later, in my opinion, pencil's the best for notes because you can go back and erase it. Also, pencil doesn't run if it gets wet, just so you know, that's really powerful. So if you took and anything you added to your notes you did in purple, and you kept that consistent through your notebook, then you know that what you took in class was in one color or form, and what you added was in another, so you can tell how much are you missing in class. So maybe you have to improve the speed of your notes taking, or maybe you have to improve your attention span. But also, when we have when you're when you're looking for evidence of revision, where you've added stuff from the notes, from it could be that you read something in the chapter reading that you want to add to the notes. It could be that you look something up and you want to add it to your uh, classroom notes. Maybe you changed the spelling of something because you didn't know how to spell it in class, and you looked it up when you got home and you wrote it in later. That's also revision, right? So all that are forms of revision. That's either again going to be yes or no. And where did you get the information? The book. And did you get it from a fellow student, etc.? But the book, a fellow student. All right, etc. So that hopefully explains the first page. I know it seemed like a lot, but it really was just me trying to explain in detail what you're supposed to be doing, and most of that is just explanation, not something you would be doing on a daily basis. Again, this is done weekly, so you can do some of it. Not like you guys as study groups could say, you know what, on Monday, what we're going to do is we're going to go over the notes on Monday for last week. Or now we can do it during for last week, but maybe on Friday you guys decide to go over your notes and make and evaluate the week's notes. So at the end of the week on Friday during advisory, or at the end of week on Friday, maybe because it might be a Friday meeting, maybe after school, or maybe the following Monday, you guys want to get together and and look at your notebook and assess it. Maybe you do your own notebook evaluation at home, right? But then when you get together for your partner's notebook evaluation, maybe you do that on Monday, or maybe you do that at the end of the week on Friday. And what you could do is, as you fill this out, and I'm not going to go through this again because it's exactly the same as this over here where you did it on your own notebook, except you're doing it on someone else's notebook. And hopefully, if you have a study partner, you're kind of going through this whole process together, and you're on the same page on exactly how much, what percentage you have of recording, reduction, recitation. So I hope that solved that question. These two here are the same. It's just this one's about your study group, and this is for your notebook. Now this is weekly recitation. So weekly, you should be doing a little recitation every day. I kind of got silly and put 20 times here. Though you could do it 20 times. I think you have about 53 minutes in a class. If you only had a couple words, like 10 words, and you were going over it with your friends, you did it 10 times, they did it 10 times, that could be 20 times. And by the way, you can count when you're quizzing someone else, you're still quizzing. So you can go ahead and count that, right? So when if you sit there and you take your index cards and you quiz a partner, word here and definition on back, or key idea here, diagram on the back, what have you. If you quiz your partner, then that also counts towards how many times you've recited, because by quizzing someone, you're actually reviewing the material as well. You're learning along with them. So with weekly recitation, what you want to do is you have to write down exactly how many times you did it, and really it should be pretty simple. Again, you could use study blue cards, Quizlet cards, index cards, pieces of paper with the information. I would use index cards if I had them. If not, I've in high school and in college, I've taken whole sheets of paper and split them up into fours and made my own little study cards out of sheets of paper. Quizlet's free if you have an iPhone or a Droid. You can get a Quizlet account. I would not necessarily trust all the definitions in Quizlet. Most of them seem pretty good. Some of them are kind of weak and they don't go into as much detail as you might like. But if August 21st, which was the first day of the week, you did that, and then August 22nd, you used your index cards. And every day you might add to your index cards because you're getting new vocabulary words or what have you, or a new idea, or a new diagram. And you did it, you have more cards, so you couldn't do it as many times, so this time you did it 10 times, right? So you can put 10 times, that's it. And how well did it go? Well, Yeah, we recited. My partner and I did well together. We we were able to to review it, and there are no issues. Then August 23rd, uh, we weren't able to. Yes, that's my dog. That's two of them, and my wife laughing at them. We were not able to. Uh, who knows? Maybe we had a meeting, or maybe there was a field trip, or maybe you were absent, or one of your partners was absent. By the way, if one of the partners is absent, there's no reason why you can't do this part on your own. You can recite on your own, right? You don't have to have someone quiz you. You can quiz yourself. So don't think that you're stuck if you don't have a partner, you don't like to work with people, what have you. Study groups are the best. They really do help. But if you really feel strongly that you want to work on your own, you can. You can do all this on your own. You just wouldn't do this part, right? You don't have to do this part if you're working on your own. But we weren't able to meet, and maybe you're the one who was absent. You didn't have your index cards, what have you. Then the 24th, on the 24th, you guys met. This time you did practice problems. Because practice problems are a form of recitation, right? You know how to do it. You're just going over the steps, or you're reviewing the steps, or you're quizzing each other on the formulas. Maybe you did that 5 times. You did 5 practice problems. And it went well. And so that's how you do a weekly reflection. If you did something a little nicer on your reflection, it probably would make me feel a little more comfortable that you're actually thinking about how well you did. But I understand you have a lot of things to do, and you have a lot of work to get done. So if you write the word well, and I see you have 10 index cards done, you reviewed them 10 times. You know what I'm going to ask you when I see you is I'm going to ask, where are your index cards? When I see you and we're grading the notebook, I'm going to ask, where's the practice problems? Let me see the practice problems. If you don't have them, I can't give you points for that section. So let's make sure that you have all that in your binder. That's what the pockets of your binder are for, right? All right, so the next piece that we're going to look at, you know what? I'm not going to go to reading right away. I'm going to go, I think, to review, I believe. No, not test prep. All right, okay, so yeah. So let's do a weekly review. So at the end of the week, for sure, on a Friday, but maybe it's a Thursday if we have a Friday meeting. You and your study group should review the older content. You should go back, like this is week 3. You should go back and make sure you understand what the syllabus is, for instance. What's the content that we're going to be testing on? You should go back and look at the 6 R's. Make sure, quiz each other on the 6 R's. You should go back and so let's do it. Let's say August 21st, themes of biology. So the previous week, we started the themes of biology. And so on August 21st, this group went over the themes of biology. They had only a few index cards made, so they went over it 20 times. And all the new themes of biology except for one. So this person knew all the things of biology except for one, so they feel comfortable that they can do it. And I was confused about the science and technology section, so now I know I have to improve that. And this is how I'm going to do it. I'm going to go in and look up and work with Mr. Mendoza after school during tutoring. It's just a quick note. I mean, I wrote a lot in there, but you could just write a quick note. If you're consistently writing in this, that I practiced it 20 times and I got it, but then on the test you don't get it. It brings this into question. What's going on? What's wrong? Were the study cards not well done? We'll have to figure that out as time goes on, but we don't have a lot of time for us to try to figure that out. So try to work hard, be honest, and make sure that you're getting these cards written up and done correctly. Here's August 22nd. Maybe on August 22nd, this is a review of weekly review of the year's content, right? So we don't have to stick just to this week. So we're learning new stuff this week, but maybe on we want to go over one topic. So maybe on August 22nd, And this doesn't have to be done every day. This can be done once a week. This could be done, maybe you do it 3 times a week, however many times you can do it, okay? So, you might say, well, what about the 6 R's? Do I remember the 6 R's? All right, so I'm going to look at the 6 R's. My team and I decided we would look at the 6 R's. Sorry, I should put the 6 R's over here. And index cards. So my study cards for index are 6 R's. And the date topic was covered. I shouldn't really have put that. I'm sorry. The topic was covered as fine as last week, so it would have been like August. Well, I can't remember exactly, but I'll say just because we introduced it the first week, I'll say August 9th, but I don't remember exactly when we covered the 6 R's in detail, and I don't have my lessons with me, so I can't really give you an exact date. So 6 R's, index cards, 8, 9, let's say is the day we covered it. How would you know what day we covered it? Well, hopefully you have your notes, right? So you go back and look at when we talked about 6 R's and explained it. So again, everything in here has to do with your notebook, which is why you have it in your notebook at the beginning of the week. So on August 9th, the time we covered it, and I really should have put the date up here. Let's say this was last week, so we could say it was, again, I'm making up the date, but let's say August 17th. All right, would be that date, and then that way you know that where to go look it up if there was an issue, right? So reflection, how did it go? Well, oh, by the way, what did we do? We did it 20 times. We did the index cards 20 times. Or maybe you don't do it 20 times. Maybe you just reviewed it. Since this is a review, maybe you don't feel like 20 times doing it 20 times is just too much. So maybe you just say, well, we reviewed it twice. That's fine. Or I did it once. I knew them. See, with this isn't 20 times I'm trying to memorize them. In this section, what you're thinking is, well, what I need to do here is I need to verify that I do still remember them, even though it's been 2 weeks. So you want to go over it twice. And if you don't know them, if you don't know the words, then you're going to have to put some more time in. You might have to do it another 10 times. Maybe you have to write them out 10 times. That's another one that I didn't write here. It's another method of review. Maybe you write it out, or recitation, rather. Maybe you want to do it 20 times. If you did it 2 times and you didn't remember, maybe you do it 20 times just to make sure you remember. But you went over it. You can check it off. I do remember. The 6 R's is good. I'm good for today. And you go ahead and continue this all week. Again, do you have to do this every day? No. But I'd like to see at least once or twice a week, if not a little more than that. I'd like to see you guys go over this stuff so that there's no real question as to what that you're practicing it, because you're going to see it on the test. Stuff that you covered 2 weeks ago, you're going to see it on the test in a month. You'll see it on a test at the final, at the end of the semester, and you'll see it on your end of course exam, because almost all of this stuff is going to be on the end of course exam. Now, reading. You're reading a book, the chemistry, chapter 1, the chemistry of life. All right, you have the chapter. It's not chapter 1. I think it's chapter 2 in that particular ebook. Again, your ebooks are coming after Labor Day, so I'm finding sources for you on the internet. So, Chapter 1 of the Chemistry of Life, August 28th. It was the date I was supposed to read it. Here's the notes, the main ideas from the notes, major ideas. And, schnapps, these elements, and you maybe talk about covalent, ionic, polar. Well, we didn't talk about polar and nonpolar yet, but almost everything else here we covered in class just on the first lesson. So you can see it's also in the textbook. You have 3 sections you have to have done by Tuesday. So there you have it. It's the reading section's done. Ideas from my colleagues. What ideas did I get from my colleagues from the reading? So I sat with my colleagues on Monday. The readings due Tuesday, Monday during advisory. I sit down and say, hey, I read the chapter. This is what I got from. These are from my notes. These are the main ideas. What did you guys get from the reading? So this isn't the notes on the reading. So don't think you have to fill this paper up, but just kind of the main ideas. I think I gave you. I think we went over like 20 slides or 10 slides on Friday, and I think you guys took a few pages worth of notes. This is not a few pages worth of notes. This is just kind of a list of the main ideas. All right. So this is a reduction, really. So what we're looking at is ideas from my colleagues and notes. What was it that you got from the reading that was different from what I got? Maybe someone else focused on another aspect of the reading, and I can learn from them what I missed in my reading. And then after you're done discussing things, and you should discuss them, not just what did you get, what did I get, maybe they got something different from what you got, or maybe that explanation that they wrote down isn't quite the one you wrote down, and you have some questions. Maybe you want to talk about it. Maybe you want to come after school and get tutoring, or maybe you want to discuss with another group. Whatever it is you want to do to make sure that you understood what chapter 1 of Chemistry Love was all about. Now, when you do this, it should fill up a whole sheet of. So this is actually only for reading. I wouldn't expect you to do this I wouldn't expect to see an entire several pages of it. But if it's a long reading like the one you have for this weekend, and it's 3 sections, maybe you expect one for 2.1, one for 2.2, one for 2.3, and one for 2.4. Maybe that's what I see. However you want to organize it, whatever makes it easier for you to digest this information. But you as a group have to kind of write down exactly what's going on. All right. The next is not going to be done every week. This is going to be done 1 week before, or 2 weeks before the exam, or 2 days before the quiz. I'll tell you, the quiz is on Wednesday of next week. So 2 days before Wednesday would be Monday. So Monday you should be doing this just to make sure that if you haven't done it, you get it done. You don't want to do it the day before because you won't have time to check your work, to quiz yourself, and do the rest. So test preparation is going to be a big deal, and it's one of those things that if you've done your notes well, and they got the content down, that's your study guide, right? And if you've done your review, and if you've done your recitation and your review, and you're pretty sure that everything is going the way you think it should be going, then your test preparation should go pretty quickly. So can you recite your vocabulary? Really, this should be, at this point, you've been doing it you've been reciting your vocabulary and your ideas and your diagrams with your study group already. So at this point, you can run through and say, test yourself, do you know it? And then you can guess what kinds of questions will be asked on each other, and you can quiz each other. So you can say, Jimmy, I don't know, but I think Mr. Mendoza is going to give us the number of the atomic number and the mass. He's going to ask us the neutron number. And then Jimmy might say, yeah, I think that's true. So you might say, well, okay, Jimmy, if I have an element that's mass number 16 and atomic number 8, what is a neutron number? And then Jimmy would probably say 8 and 8 neutrons, and that's pretty good. And so we just checked this out. That's it. That's reciting. Even though it's not on an index card, it's a quiz. You're quizzing each other. So you're guessing what kinds of questions will be asked on the quiz to each other. You're reciting the vocabulary with index cards or with practice problems or what have you. You're identifying where you're confused. Again, you might say, well, I'm not sure, I don't understand how, if atoms have protons and neutrons, why is it hydrogen only has a proton? That could be a point where you're confused about. So anything you're confused about, this is kind of almost the most important part for test preparation. And you want to write down when the exam is, because not only is that going to remind you, and you should have that written down in your calendar as well, it's also going to allow you to make sure you're going over, that you're planning, well, if the test is on Thursday, I got to make sure I get these confused points resolved before Thursday. That's really important. All right. see teacher during. So what I'm going to do? I'm going to see teacher during office hours and make sure I get these confused points corrected. If you guys go through everything and you don't see any confused points, then maybe you don't need to see me. Or maybe the idea is, maybe there's a better idea. Maybe you don't see any confused points. You get everything done. You come and check this whole thing out with me to make sure you're studying the right material. Because how many times have kids come to me and said, "Well, I didn't know this was on the test. We covered this stuff." Now I studied the other material. I studied the other set of cards. Well, with this system, there really is no excuse, right? So you should know, because you have a whole study group, and some of you have study groups of 4 or 5. You have a whole study group has gone over everything that we've gone over in class weekly. You've gone over your notes. You've gone over their notes. You've recited the material. You're reading it. You've asked yourself what percent. You've looked at the PowerPoints online. You've looked at the videos, and you've said, well, I think we got it. I think we got most of it. So there really shouldn't be this question of how much material is on this test, what is going to be on the test. This stuff, you know what's on the test, you know what you have to study. The stuff you have to study is the stuff you don't do well on. The stuff that you have to study is the stuff that you're confused about. You got to get the right answer, then you have to study that. What does studying mean? Reciting, reviewing, reflecting. All right, so recited the steps of the process is being tested. Have you gone over what the steps are for, let's say, finding neutron number? Right? So the steps for finding neutron number. We know mass number equals proton number plus neutron number. So what you have to remember is that you have to remember this formula. If you know algebra well enough, you can substitute, like the example I just gave you a little earlier in the video. If you have a mass number of 16 and you have an atomic number of 8, and that's oxygen, by the way, and you want to know the neutron number. How many neutrons does this element have, this atom have? Well, how do you get neutron number by itself? You subtract 8. So subtract 8 from both sides. And so the most stable form of this element has 8 neutrons. So that's what you should be able to do when you're, during your practice problems, during your process. So you should be able to walk yourselves through the process. So you can say, Jimmy, how did you find the neutron number? Well, you have to remember that mass number equals proton number plus neutron number. You fill in what you know, and then you solve for the rest. So you fill in if he gives you the mass number and the proton number, if that's what you got, the mass number and the proton number, then you can solve for the neutron number. If he gives you the proton number and the neutron number, then you can find the mass number. And if he gives you the mass number and the neutron number, then you can find the proton number. So realistically, you should be able to walk through how to do the problems. If you don't know how to do the problems, then that's one of those visits that you have to do to your teacher, any teacher, but specifically me during my office hours. Okay, so there's that set. There's that checking. You see how much you have to do well to go over all this material. This is what somebody says they're studying. This is what should be happening. And finally, a weekly checklist. So I'd like to see you having your assignments. I can't tell you after this assignment, I've given this assignment, how many kids have checked their Jupyter grades and started asking questions. Where's this assignment? Where's that assignment? I did this, I missed that. This is great. This is why this sheet's there, so that you're checking me and I'm checking, and I know that you're keeping track of your work and you know what grades you're getting and you're giving me feedback. You're telling me that where there are mistakes and I can correct it before it becomes a problem. So this is exactly what we want to be doing. So again, this week would be, I think all the other stuff we filled in. I didn't leave any blanks. Pretty sure. But this week was the week of the 25th, or you can put down, like we did earlier, the beginning to the end. But you can say the week of the 25th. That would be fine. Let me use black, 'cause, week of the 25th. Or you can put, whatever date you want, but it's that week. You can also, decide. Well, it really is. It's the week of the 21st through the 25th, or whatever you want to put down there. It doesn't matter. So you don't have to put the whole name of the assignment. It could be, syllabus quiz, right? And the more accurate you are with the assignment name, the easier our discussion if there's a mistake, right? And then there's a date. Let's say it's August 20th, whatever. Maybe you got a B on it. It's the grade you got on that particular assignment. Are you satisfied with your grade? Maybe you say, no, I'm not satisfied. I don't want to be. I'd like an A. What did you do to earn this grade? Well, I did the 6 R's, but was confused, and I didn't go to office hours. So I didn't get an explanation. I didn't ask questions in class either, so that's a problem. When are you going to remediate the content? Remember, during office hours. So what day? So if this is the week of the 25th, and of course the syllabus quiz is not an assignment you had the week of the 25th, but I just made that up. You might say, well, I'm thinking I'm going to come in on Tuesday the 29th. So you say Tuesday the 29th. Maybe this will change, so leave myself some space. But that's when I'm planning on it. And the other thing is I'm planning on the 29th, but maybe Mr. Mendoza gets called to a meeting, or maybe he has to go home for an emergency, or something happens and he has to take care of it. So maybe maybe the 29th doesn't turn out to be a good date, so I might have to change this date to some other date. Maybe I'll have to do it the 30th, the following day. That happened this week because of a meeting I had to attend. And the previous week I was out at the doctor's office. So when are you retaking or resubmitting? So when are you going to retake it? And when are you? This is remediation. So this is when you're going to go over the material to make sure you know what you missed and what it is that you need to do to correct. And during this remediation, I might tell you, well, look, I need to see index cards on the content. This is the content. I need to see you reciting it at least 5 or 6 times before you sit down and try to take this quiz. So, most of this is on honor system. I'm not going to be there while you're reciting it 5 or 6 times or 10 times, or writing it down 5 or 10 times. At this stage, there has to be a place where I'm going to have to trust that you're going to do what you say you're going to do. And then when are you retaking or resubmitting? Now you're asking yourself, when am I going to take this test? So if on Tuesday the 29th, I'm going to remediate, maybe on the 31st, what was it, 31 days in August? I can't never remember that. Yeah, there's 31 days in August, so maybe on the 31st, so maybe it's Thursday, the 31st, and I wouldn't even write this down, either one of these dates down, really, if I didn't talk to Mr. Mendoza. And even if I did talk to him, I should write it in pencil, because I might have to move those dates depending on what happens with the school schedule, with Mr. Mendoza's schedule, or whatever. Maybe another one of these is the chapter reading, and there's some notes, and the notes are due on Tuesday. Let's see, what's the date on Tuesday? The 29th. That's when they're due. Oh, you know what? This is going over the weekly class check, so I shouldn't do stuff that's due next week. Should do stuff that would have been due this week. So the 20th was a Sunday, so really I should have done 21st. And maybe this is the 22nd. But you get the idea, and this is a grade C, And no, I'm not certainly not satisfied with that. And it's a chapter, maybe it's a chapter quiz. I'm making these assignments up as well. And how did you earn this grade? I did not recite enough, or maybe I didn't make the index cards, I didn't reduce, or whatever it is that you didn't get done, because that's how you earn a grade, right? If you earned a C, there's something you didn't do. I'm more interested with this on the stuff that you didn't do. The stuff you did is great, but maybe it wasn't enough, or maybe it wasn't detailed enough, or maybe it was just plain wrong, because sometimes we write down the wrong thing. But the question is, how many times, what is it that you do that you didn't do, so that when you go back to, when we remediate, when you come to see me in remediation, then maybe it will be the 29th again. Maybe on that Tuesday after school, you're gonna tell me, well, this is what I didn't do, so this is what. And then when we have our conversation, obviously that's what you have to do to get it right. And again, maybe the recitation or the retake is going to be on a Thursday, and that'll be the 31st again. Everything in pencil, write small. I'm writing big so you can see it clearly. After you have all this filled out, and you have all the comments and everything, and really, I don't foresee us having more than 3 or 4 or 5 assignments in a week. One a day. An assignment once a day is enough. Sometimes a lot of things are due in 1 week, so sometimes you're going to see more than that. But that's not because you had to do it that week. It's assignments that maybe like a chapter reading that was over 5 days is due. So hopefully you and your folks have a discussion over the grades and over how well you're doing, and then your parent signs it, and they date it, and then you sign it, and you date it, and you're done with this assignment. Now this took a long time for me to go over it, and I wrote the instructions there. I didn't think it was too ambiguous. I did explain it in class to some extent, but I wanted to go through every detail of the assignment, of this weekly assignment. I want you to know that when you're doing it, especially if you do it often, it's going to be rough. It's probably going to take a little more time the first time you do it, but after a while, this is going to be very quick. I don't expect this to take a lot of your time. Where I see you spending your time is making the index cards, reviewing, taking the notes, going over the notes, preparing the notes, but evaluating your notes, right? So number one, evaluating your notes, writing down the summaries, getting the kids' names down there in your study group. I don't expect that to take too long. I don't expect this to take too long, where you're reviewing the the year's content. I don't expect you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rows that you can go over 6 different topics a week if you really wanted to. I don't expect you to do it 20 times like you see here. I think if you go over the stack, one time on that specific date, you went over it one time and you knew them all, then you're done. You can move on, right? So this is not this week's stuff. This is stuff that happened weeks prior. For this week, I would expect, of course, you go over your partner's notes, right? For the week, I expect to see this week's stuff being recited and learning it well, and then that's why we review it later. To make sure that it's still fresh in our minds for the test. Then we go ahead and do our reading, and we make sure we're putting it all together. Maybe we revise our notes after we read, but we make sure we know what the main ideas were from the reading. Get the reading done before the lesson so that you can really take advantage of a good class discussion. And then, then you prepare for your tests. You do your practice problems. You do your steps to solving the problems. You do all the checklists. I'm not going to go over it again. You can go back and review the video if you really have to, but you get the point. This is what studying means. When people tell me they work hard to prepare for an exam, this is the kind of thing I would expect you to fill out or to be able to do. And so it's doing this stuff is the stuff that's going to take your time. going over it and checking it off, it shouldn't really take you that much time. And then the weekly grade check, that should be pretty straightforward. You should be able to go through all your assignments, check the grades, make sure all this, if there's a missing there, why did you miss it? When can you remediate it? When can you resubmit it? So that's the kind of thing I'd like to see you do. That's all. I don't think it's that hard to do. I think it just seems like it's going to take a long time because, I don't think a lot of you have done work like this. I don't think a lot of you, based on what you've told me, I don't think a lot of you have really gone into the detail of how to actually review material and prepare yourself for an exam. Hopefully this helps you. It's been an hour. This video is an hour long. But again, it's something that it's for your use. It's not really required for you to watch the whole thing. You can watch it as you wish. And I don't think it'll take you an hour to do. I spent an hour going all over all of this, and I was explaining it in detail. I would expect you guys, once your study group gets efficient, to be able to do all 6 of these sheets fairly quickly. So I really don't think the filling out of the sheets is an issue. I think if you're not doing the work, I think if you're not reading, if you're not summarizing, if you're not taking notes, if you can't tell how much of the total notes you have, if you're not having a good discussion with if you're wasting time during your study group sessions, then yeah, this is going to be hard. You're going to waste your time. If you find yourself that your study group isn't working well and you don't want to work with anyone, would you rather work on your own? Go ahead and do it on your own. I think it's easy. It's easy enough for you to do it. You have your web page, has all the content for the week. So there really shouldn't be any question on what you need to get done. All right, good luck.